Introduction to the heroine. Sophia had always lived a life of comfort and luxury. As the only daughter of a wealthy businessman, she grew up surrounded by grand mansions, lavish parties, and fine silks. Her father, Mr. Edward Sinclair, was a self-made man who had built his fortune through years of hard work and dedication. Though he was often busy with business, he adored his daughter and ensured she had everything she desired. However, beneath the glamorous life, there was one sorrow that never left Sophia's heart: the loss of her mother at a young age. For years it had been just Sophia and her father, and they were inseparable. But everything changed when Mr. Sinclair remarried. His new wife, Margaret, was a woman of striking beauty, but an even stronger thirst for power and wealth. She showered Mr. Sinclair with affection, convincing him that she truly cared for him and his daughter. Sophia, however, sensed something cold and calculating beneath Margaret's charm, but out of love for her father, she remained silent. Tragedy struck when Mr. Sinclair fell gravely ill. Within months, he passed away, leaving Sophia heartbroken and vulnerable. She had lost not only her beloved father, but also the only protection she had from the cruel world. With no siblings or close relatives to turn to, she was left entirely at the mercy of her stepmother. As soon as the funeral ended and the mourners left, Margaret revealed her true nature. The kindness and warmth she had once displayed vanished, replaced by an icy indifference. "This house, this wealth, it is all mine now," she declared one evening, her sharp eyes glinting with greed. "You may stay, but do not think for a moment that I will waste my resources on you." Sophia was stripped of the privileges she once took for granted. The grand bedroom that had been hers was given to Margaret's distant relatives, who suddenly moved into the mansion. Sophia was forced into a small, barely furnished room in the servants' quarters. Her luxurious dresses were sold, and she was made to wear simple, worn-out clothes. The household staff, once loyal to her family, now took orders from Margaret, treating Sophia as little more than an inconvenience. Despite the cruelty, Sophia held her head high. She refused to break under her stepmother's oppression. Instead, she found solace in reading the books her father had left behind, escaping into worlds where justice prevailed and love conquered all. But deep down, she knew that real life was far more unforgiving. Margaret had plans for Sophia, plans that involved marrying her off to a wealthy suitor who could bring more fortune and status to their name. But Sophia, who had once lived a life of privilege, was about to learn that true happiness didn't come from riches. It came from something much deeper, something her stepmother could never understand. And soon, she would make a choice that would change her life forever. The stepmother's greed. Margaret Sinclair had always been a woman of ambition. She had married Mr. Edward Sinclair not out of love, but for the wealth and prestige that came with his name. When he passed away, she mourned only for the opportunities lost, not for the man himself. Though she inherited a portion of his fortune, much of it was tied to Sophia, his only daughter. This fact infuriated Margaret. As long as Sophia remained unmarried, she retained control over a significant part of the Sinclair wealth. Margaret despised the girl, seeing her as nothing more than an obstacle standing between her and complete control of the Sinclair estate. However, she knew that simply getting rid of Sophia wasn't an option, at least not without drawing suspicion. Instead, she devised a plan that would secure her status while eliminating Sophia's hold on the family fortune. She would marry the girl off to an influential, wealthy man, one who would ensure that Sophia's inheritance became part of his own. With Sophia out of the way, Margaret could live in peace, without the constant reminder of her late husband's beloved daughter. It didn't take long for Margaret to find a suitable candidate. Lord Reginald Davenport, a widowed nobleman in his late 50s, was known for his vast wealth, ruthless business dealings, and desperate desire for a young, beautiful wife to maintain his image. Though he had little interest in love, he saw marriage as a transaction, one that would benefit both him and his new bride's family. Margaret wasted no time in arranging a meeting, making it clear that Sophia's hand came with a substantial fortune. Sophia, however, was unaware of her stepmother's schemes until the day she was summoned to Margaret's parlor. Dressed in her finest silk gown, Margaret sat on an ornate chair, her fingers adorned with jewels, her lips curled into a smug smile. "Sophia, my dear," she began in a falsely sweet tone, "I have wonderful news for you. You are to be engaged to Lord Reginald Davenport." Sophia's heart sank. She had heard of Lord Davenport, a man old enough to be her father, notorious for his cold, calculating nature. The thought of marrying him sent a chill down her spine. "I will not marry him," she said firmly, meeting Margaret's gaze with defiance. Margaret's smile vanished. "You will do as you are told," she snapped. "This is not up for discussion. Lord Davenport is wealthy, influential, and more than willing to take you as his wife. Do you think you have any other options? No one else will marry a penniless girl like you?" Sophia clenched her fists. She had lost her home, her freedom, and the life she once knew. But she refused to lose herself. She had to find a way out before it was too late. Little did Margaret know, Sophia had already met someone who had no wealth or title, but who had something far more valuable: love. Meeting the poor man. Sophia had always believed that life was more than wealth and status, but she had never truly understood what it meant to live without privilege, until her stepmother stripped her of everything. Forced into a life of restrictions, she longed for freedom, for a world beyond the cold, suffocating walls of the Sinclair estate. And so, one evening, under the cover of darkness, she slipped out of the grand mansion and into the bustling streets of the city. Dressed in a plain cloak to avoid recognition, she wandered through the lively market square. The air was filled with the scent of freshly baked bread, roasted chestnuts, and the chatter of merchants selling their goods. Unlike the extravagant balls and formal dinners she had once attended, this place felt real. For the first time in a long while, she felt invisible. Not a wealthy heiress, but just another girl moving through the crowd. It was there, in the heart of the marketplace, that she met him. Daniel was a simple man, a carpenter who worked tirelessly to provide for his ailing mother and younger siblings. He had strong hands, worn from years of labor, and warm, kind eyes that held a quiet strength. He wasn't wealthy, nor did he wear fine clothes, but there was something about him that drew Sophia in, an honesty, a kindness she had rarely seen among the wealthy men her stepmother had introduced her to. Their first meeting was purely accidental. She had stopped to admire a beautifully carved wooden horse at a small stall, running her fingers over the smooth surface. "You have a good eye," came a voice beside her. She turned to see Daniel, a soft smile on his face. "Did you make this?" she asked, surprised. He nodded. "I did. Carving is just one of the things I do. It's not much, but it's honest work." She could hear the quiet pride in his voice, and something about it made her smile. "It's beautiful," she said sincerely. Daniel studied her for a moment. "You don't seem like someone who usually walks through the market," he observed. Sophia hesitated. She wasn't sure why, but she didn't want to reveal who she really was. "I just needed some fresh air," she said vaguely. He didn't press her for details, but there was something in his gaze that told her he understood. From that day on, she found reasons to return to the market. Their conversations became longer, their laughter more frequent. Daniel told her about his life, his dreams of building his own workshop, of giving his family a better future. Sophia, in turn, spoke of books, of the places she longed to see, of the life she wished to live outside of her stepmother's grasp. Slowly, unknowingly, they fell in love. But their happiness was fragile. Sophia knew her stepmother would never approve of Daniel, and Daniel had no idea that the woman he was falling for was the daughter of one of the wealthiest men in the city. Their love was real, but could it survive the truth? Hidden marriage. Sophia had never imagined that love could feel so pure, so freeing. With Daniel, she wasn't the Sinclair heiress, burdened by wealth and expectations. She was simply a woman in love. Every moment they shared was a stolen piece of happiness, a quiet rebellion against the life her stepmother had forced upon her. But as their love deepened, so did the danger of being discovered. Margaret had grown suspicious of Sophia's frequent disappearances. The stepmother believed she was still in mourning, isolated in her room, but Sophia always found ways to escape, to slip away into the world where Daniel existed. She knew that if Margaret discovered the truth, she would stop at nothing to destroy it. One evening, under the glow of the moon and the soft whispers of the wind, Daniel took her hands in his. "Sophia, I know I have nothing to offer you, no grand estate, no riches, but I love you, and if you're willing, I want to spend my life with you." Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't care about wealth, Daniel. I care about you." And so, with only the stars as their witnesses, they made a decision that would change their lives forever. A few days later, in a small chapel on the outskirts of the city, they were married in secret. There were no lavish celebrations, no grand guests, just Daniel, Sophia, and an old priest who asked no questions. She wore a simple white dress borrowed from Daniel's sister, and he held her hand as if he would never let go. "I, Sophia Sinclair, take you, Daniel Carter, to be my husband," she whispered, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her heart. "I, Daniel Carter, take you, Sophia Sinclair, to be my wife," he vowed, his gaze never leaving hers. With a kiss, their fates were sealed, but they both knew the real battle had only just begun. Sophia returned to the Sinclair estate as if nothing had changed, hiding her wedding ring beneath her glove. Each day she pretended to be the obedient stepdaughter, while at night she found ways to see Daniel in secret. The world saw her as an unmarried woman, but in her heart she belonged to him. Margaret, however, was relentless. The wedding to Lord Davenport was still being arranged, and Sophia knew she was running out of time. Sooner or later, her secret would be exposed, and when that day came, she would have to choose between protecting her love or facing her stepmother's wrath. Dual life. Sophia had always known that deception was dangerous, but now it was a necessity. Each day she played the role her stepmother demanded, a dutiful young woman preparing for a future marriage to Lord Davenport. She wore the fine dresses Margaret provided, attended the social gatherings she arranged, and smiled politely at the suitors she introduced. But beneath the surface, she was living a lie. At night, she belonged to a different world, a world where she was not Sophia Sinclair, the heiress, but Sophia Carter, the devoted wife of a humble carpenter. While Margaret plotted her engagement, Sophia spent her evenings with Daniel, helping him in his small workshop, learning about his trade, and sharing quiet moments of love and laughter. She learned to walk the fine line between both lives, carefully covering her tracks. She told Margaret she was taking long walks in the garden, when in reality, she was slipping through hidden paths to meet Daniel. She hid her wedding ring beneath her gloves, removing it only when she was forced to attend gatherings where questions might arise. Yet, the weight of her secret grew heavier with each passing day. Margaret was relentless in her pursuit of an advantageous match, and Lord Davenport had begun pressing for an official engagement. "You are of marrying age, Sophia," Margaret reminded her one evening, her sharp gaze locking onto hers. "I will not tolerate any further delays. Lord Davenport expects your answer soon." Sophia forced a smile, hiding the panic rising within her. "Of course, stepmother," she replied smoothly. "I only wish to honor father's memory a little longer before making such a decision." Margaret narrowed her eyes but said nothing. Meanwhile, Daniel remained unaware of the full extent of the danger. He knew their love was forbidden, that Sophia's stepmother would never approve, but he didn't know how desperately Margaret sought to control Sophia's fate. Sophia, determined to protect him, kept the worst of it to herself, but secrets have a way of unraveling. One evening, as Sophia slipped out to meet Daniel, a pair of watchful eyes followed her from the shadows. Margaret had grown suspicious, and soon the truth she had fought so hard to conceal would be revealed. Challenges and sacrifices. Marriage had bound Sophia and Daniel together, but love alone could not shield them from the harsh realities of life. While their secret union brought them joy, it also came with sacrifices neither had fully anticipated. Daniel worked tirelessly in his small workshop, taking on every commission he could find: furniture repairs, custom carvings, and even basic labor jobs when work was scarce. His hands, once strong and steady, grew rougher with each passing day. Sophia, once accustomed to fine gowns and elegant meals, now learned to survive on simple bread, soup, and whatever little Daniel could provide. But she never complained. If anything, she found comfort in the simplicity of their life together, where every shared meal and every quiet evening by candlelight felt like a treasure. Still, their struggles deepened. With no dowry, no family support, and no inheritance she could access, Sophia had nothing to contribute financially. She wanted to help Daniel, to ease his burdens, but her stepmother's control over her life left her with few options. She resorted to selling her old jewelry in secret, using the money to buy supplies for Daniel's workshop. But even that would not last forever. Meanwhile, Margaret grew more impatient. Lord Davenport was pressing for an engagement, and Sophia was running out of excuses. The pressure was suffocating, and the risk of exposure became greater with each passing day. One night, as she sat beside Daniel in their small home, exhaustion etched into his features, she took his hands in hers. "I will find a way," she whispered. "We will make this work. I won't let them take me from you." Daniel sighed, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "I don't care how little we have, Sophia. I just need you by my side." Their love had not weakened under hardship. It had only grown stronger. But love alone would not keep them safe. And as the walls of deception closed in, they both knew that their greatest test was yet to come. The stepmother had always prided herself on being observant, a trait that had served her well over the years. But lately, something felt off about her stepdaughter. The heroine, once open and full of life, had begun to withdraw into herself, her demeanor shifting from carefree to secretive. It wasn't just the late-night phone calls or the cryptic messages she'd receive. No, it was the sudden, frequent disappearances. The stepmother couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, something the heroine wasn't telling her. At first, the stepmother tried to brush it off as teenage rebellion or a phase, but as time went on, her suspicions grew. The heroine would slip out of the house at odd hours, her expression unreadable, and wouldn't return until hours later. When questioned, she'd offer vague excuses, always seeming to have a plausible reason for her absence. Yet the stepmother's intuition told her there was more to the story. It wasn't long before the stepmother made the decision to take matters into her own hands. One evening, when the heroine had once again slipped out, she decided to follow her. She waited until the door closed behind her stepdaughter, then, with a quiet determination, slipped out the back door, careful to stay out of sight. The streets were quiet that night, the hum of the city distant in the background. She kept her distance, but the heroine was oblivious to being followed. The stepmother watched as she walked purposefully down the road, her pace steady. She followed her through narrow alleyways and quiet lanes, her heart thumping with both curiosity and anxiety. Where was the heroine going? Why was she being so secretive? After what felt like an eternity, they arrived at a secluded spot near the edge of town. The heroine stopped in front of an old, abandoned building. A shadow moved in the doorway, and the heroine stepped forward to meet it. The stepmother's breath caught in her throat as a man emerged from the shadows. He was tall, with dark hair and an air of mystery about him. His face was unfamiliar, and the stepmother had never seen him before, but the way he and the heroine interacted told her there was something between them, a connection. They exchanged a few words, the stepmother unable to make out the conversation from her hiding spot. But the way they spoke, the warmth in the heroine's eyes as she looked at him, was enough to confirm her suspicions. This was no casual acquaintance. The heroine had been hiding something, and it wasn't just a fleeting secret. It was something deeper. The stepmother stood frozen, her mind racing. Who was this man? What was he to her stepdaughter? As the meeting ended, the heroine gave him a brief hug before turning and walking back in the direction of home. The stepmother waited a few moments before slowly retreating, her heart heavy with the weight of her discovery. She had uncovered the first thread of a much bigger mystery, but it only led to more questions. The heroine, once so easy to understand, had become a puzzle she couldn't solve. Now, the stepmother's determination to uncover the truth had only deepened. She wasn't going to let this go, not when there were still so many secrets left to uncover. The game had only just begun. The tension in the air was palpable as the stepmother stood in front of her stepdaughter, arms crossed, eyes cold and unyielding. The heroine had returned home from her secret meeting, unaware that her stepmother had learned the truth of her clandestine encounters. The stepmother, having pieced together enough, had decided it was time for the confrontation. "Where have you been?" The stepmother's voice was sharp, cutting through the silence. The heroine froze, her heart racing as the words hung in the air. She tried to compose herself, but she could already sense where this conversation was headed. "Nowhere important," she replied, attempting to play it off casually, but the stepmother wasn't buying it. The stepmother took a step closer, her eyes narrowing. "Don't lie to me, I know everything. I saw you with him." The words dropped like a bomb, and the heroine's face paled, the weight of the situation sinking in. "You've been sneaking around with some stranger behind my back. You think I didn't notice? Do you think I'm blind?" The heroine's stomach twisted with guilt, but she couldn't bring herself to admit anything. She had been keeping this secret for so long, the thought of revealing it was terrifying. But the stepmother's next words would change everything. "I'll tell you this, and I'll tell you once," the stepmother continued, her voice cold and calculated. "If you want to continue living under my roof, you will marry someone of my choosing, someone wealthy, someone who will secure your future, someone who will keep you in your place. If you don't, I'll disown you. You'll have nothing." The heroine's breath caught in her throat, her heart racing in her chest. She had always known that her stepmother was controlling, but she had never thought it would come to this. The stepmother's words were like a chain around her neck, each one tightening the grip on her freedom. She wanted to argue, to tell her stepmother she couldn't be forced into this, but the look in her eyes, the cruel determination, made her freeze. "You don't understand," the heroine whispered, her voice trembling. "I love him. I don't want to marry someone for money." The stepmother's eyes flashed with fury. "Love? Love won't buy you a comfortable life. Love won't give you power, status, or security. You'll be nothing without the right connections. You're a fool if you think otherwise." The heroine's chest tightened as the reality of her situation crashed down on her. She had always dreamed of choosing her own path, but now it seemed as if her stepmother was determined to force her hand. The heroine's heart ached, torn between the love she had for the mysterious man and the suffocating control of her stepmother. "I don't care what you say," the heroine replied, her voice growing firmer, though the fear still lingered in her chest. "I will not marry someone just for money. I will not let you dictate my life like that." The stepmother's face darkened, and for a moment silence hung between them. The stepmother's lips curled into a tight smile, one that sent a chill down the heroine's spine. "Then I guess you'll find out what it's like to have nothing, to be truly alone." With those words, the stepmother turned on her heel, leaving the heroine standing there, stunned and heartbroken. The confrontation had only just begun, but the battle between their wills had already reached its peak. The heroine knew that from this moment on, her life would never be the same. The heroine sat in her room that evening, her mind still reeling from the confrontation with her stepmother. The weight of the ultimatum hung over her, and her heart felt heavy with fear of losing everything she cared about. She couldn't imagine marrying for wealth, especially not to someone she didn't love. But what could she do? Her stepmother's power over her was undeniable, and now her own future seemed to be in jeopardy. As she sat by the window, staring out into the dimming sky, her thoughts drifted back to the man she had been meeting in secret. His name was Elias, and he was everything her stepmother would despise. He wasn't rich, nor did he have the status or connections that the stepmother so desperately craved for her. But what Elias lacked in wealth, he made up for in kindness, intelligence, and a quiet strength that had always drawn the heroine in. Her mind raced with the memory of their last meeting. Elias had held her hands, his eyes filled with warmth, yet a trace of sadness lingered behind them. She remembered how he had told her, with a quiet resolve, that he would never force her into a life of luxury or status. He didn't care about wealth. His only concern was that she was happy. But in light of everything that had just happened, The heroine couldn't help but feel the pang of doubt. Was she only seeing what she wanted to see? Was Elias truly the man he appeared to be, or was she just chasing an impossible dream? The following day, she decided to confront Elias. She needed to understand the truth, to know if he was truly the man she believed him to be, or if he had been hiding something all along. She found him in the same place they always met, a small, quiet cafe at the edge of town. Elias was sitting at a table by the window, his back to her as she entered. When he heard her approach, he looked up, his face lighting up with a soft smile. But this time, there was something different in his eyes, a depth, a quiet confidence she hadn't seen before. "You came," he said, his voice soft but warm. "I had to," she replied, her voice trembling. She sat across from him, looking directly into his eyes. "Elias, I need to ask you something." He raised an eyebrow, clearly sensing the urgency in her tone. "Anything." "Are you really poor?" she asked, her heart beating faster as she finally voiced the question that had been on her mind for weeks. "Is that why you've been so secretive? Why you've been hiding everything?" Elias's expression faltered for just a moment, and the heroine could see the weight of her question settle on him. He sat back, staring at her for a long moment, his lips pressing into a thin line. Finally, he spoke, his voice quiet yet firm. "No, I'm not poor," he admitted, his eyes not leaving hers. "I chose this life, a simple life. I could have continued the way I was living before, but that wasn't the life I wanted. I wanted peace. I wanted to build something real, not just be known for what I had." The heroine's mind whirled with this revelation. She had assumed he was just a humble man, struggling to make ends meet. But this was something else entirely. "But why?" she asked, still struggling to understand. "Why would you choose to live like this if you have everything?" "Because money doesn't define who I am," Elias explained, his tone sincere. "It doesn't bring happiness or love. I wanted to find something more meaningful than just wealth. I wanted to live authentically, on my own terms." The heroine felt a wave of relief wash over her, her heart swelling with affection for him. He wasn't just the man she had fallen for. He was someone who had chosen a path that reflected his true values, not the expectations of society. She smiled softly, a tear threatening to fall from the corner of her eye. "I don't care about your wealth, Elias. I care about you, and I care about us." Elias reached across the table, gently taking her hand in his. "Then we'll face everything together, no matter what comes." In that moment, the heroine understood. The man she had fallen in love with was far more than she had ever imagined. He was her equal in every way, and together they could build a future beyond the constraints of wealth and status. Their love would be their greatest treasure, and that was all that mattered. The days following the revelation about Elias's true identity were filled with tension, but also hope. The heroine had never felt more certain of her feelings for him, and together they began to plan for the future they both dreamed of, one built on trust, love, and mutual respect. The heroine knew her stepmother wouldn't easily accept their relationship, but she had made up her mind. She would stand by Elias, no matter the consequences. The confrontation was inevitable. One afternoon, the heroine summoned the courage to face her stepmother. She had kept the truth from her for too long, and now it was time for everything to come to light. Her heart pounded as she walked into the sitting room, where her stepmother was waiting. The stepmother looked up, her expression still cold from their last exchange, but there was a sharpness in her eyes that made the heroine's stomach tighten. "I've made my decision," the heroine said, standing tall. "I'm going to marry Elias. I love him, and I won't be forced into a marriage of convenience just to please you." The stepmother's eyes flared with anger. "You dare defy me? After everything I've done for you, you choose a poor man over the life I've arranged for you." Her voice rose in fury, but the heroine remained calm, unyielding in her resolve. "I know the truth now, mother," the heroine said, her words cutting through the tension. "Elias is not poor. He has wealth, Yes, but he's chosen a life of simplicity. He doesn't care for riches the way you do. He wants something real, something meaningful. And I'm choosing him. The stepmother's expression faltered, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. So, he's been hiding his true wealth this whole time? Why would he do that? He chose a life of peace, not to flaunt his money or power. He's not interested in living for appearances, the heroine replied, her voice steady. He's everything I've ever wanted. He's kind, genuine, and he loves me. For a long moment, the stepmother was silent, her face a mask of indecision. Her world had been built on status and wealth, and this revelation shattered everything she believed in. But seeing the resolve in her stepdaughter's eyes, something inside her shifted. Perhaps, for the first time, she saw that her grip on control was slipping, and that love, real, unshakable love, was more powerful than anything she could force upon them. With a deep sigh, the stepmother stood up. I don't understand it, she admitted, her voice softer than usual. I don't know why you would choose this path, but if this is what you want, I have no choice but to accept it. The heroine's heart skipped a beat. You'll accept us? The stepmother nodded, though her expression was conflicted. I won't stand in the way of your happiness, but know this. You will have to fight for this life. It won't be easy, but if you believe in him, and if you believe in yourself, then maybe it will be worth it. Tears welled up in the heroine's eyes as she stepped forward, wrapping her arms around the stepmother in a rare moment of tenderness. Thank you, Mother. From that moment on, the stepmother's approval, though reluctant, was granted. The couple's love, built on honesty and a shared vision of the future, proved to be more powerful than any material possession. The heroine and Elias married, not in a grand, extravagant ceremony, but in a simple gathering of close friends and family. It was a day full of warmth, laughter, and genuine happiness, everything they had dreamed of. The stepmother, though still skeptical of their unconventional path, couldn't help but witness the strength of their bond. The couple's love was a reminder that wealth could never buy happiness, and that the richest lives were those filled with love and authenticity. As the years passed, the heroine and Elias thrived, not because of their possessions, but because of their unwavering commitment to one another. They built a life grounded in mutual respect and understanding, proving to everyone around them that love was, indeed, the most valuable treasure of all. And the stepmother, though she would never fully let go of her materialistic tendencies, came to appreciate the simple beauty of their happiness, a happiness that could never be bought or sold.